Irish guy from Boston. He had an English accent. And he'd been married like 4 times. He was a career Air Force guy. So when I say the dude was uptight, he was uptight. And it was so weird. We nearly called him Papa O. I remember there was this one time, we brought this kid to Sunday school, and he was just in and out, in and out, in and out. And at the time, our church was on a base foundation in the doctor's office. And this kid starts bolting down the hallway, and the sanctuary, you can hear him, go, base foundation. And Papa O get up and open the door, he goes to the hallway, hey kid, quit your running or I'll break your legs. True story. And so now we kid driving us crazy. Hey kid, quit your running or I'll break your legs. No one threatened their kids. Awesome. So just a heads up, I don't know if everyone in the back can hear me. Okay, we're good. I don't want to fight Brother Baker too much for noise space, so I'm going to try to be respectful of him. I just got done doing a psalm session for an hour, so I am wiped out. So pardon me if I just read the handout. I read pretty much. All right, but I do have a handout for you guys. So that's going to be found in your pamphlets under Classroom Management in a Nutshell. Classroom Management in a Nutshell. And I just want to say, I should have waited for you to start talking until my time started. I'm taking this until 2:40. Awesome. Classroom management in a nutshell. So just a heads up, you will not get every nut and bolt and every tool for managing your classroom, for discipline, for all those things. You won't get on everything in one session. All right. Brother Booker, obviously, he said if we would like an in-depth boot camp, we'd be here for 2 weeks. So there's just no way we can do that. So in this session, I hope to give you some practical tips and a brief overview, a synopsis of how to properly manage your class. Can you do some classroom management? No, just somebody out there got to be able to. My poor children.
Hey, your kids.
Quit your running, I'll break your legs. All right. Okay, so the first step to classroom management is going to be starting with, everybody point yourself and say, it starts with me. We got to be able to manage ourselves. It's amazing the hypocrisy of us to expect kids. And I kind of hit on this a little bit this morning. Sometimes it's so easy to point our finger at culture and our kids, and they don't have the attention span, so we've got to do all this stuff. Well, sometimes the finger can really be pointed back around to us. And so we need to learn to manage ourselves well if we expect to manage a classroom well. I believe that everybody, God has equipped everyone in the church to be a leader. Every single person in the church is equipped to be a leader. But there's stages of leadership. The very first, the most foundational stage of leadership is self-leadership. Everyone is built to lead themselves, first and foremost. And if you cannot lead yourself, then you are not qualified to lead others. So everyone in the sound of my voice has been called to some form of leadership. Self-leadership is the foundation of it. Then it's others' leadership. And then it might be a leadership over an entire class or an entire department, or leadership over leaders even. So there's different tiers of leadership. But the foundation of all leadership is self-leadership. The foundation of all management is going to be self-management. Got to assume the responsibility of management, of leadership, and point the finger to us before we just push it off on the kids. Abraham Lincoln would say this. He says, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. You know, it's not going to take nearly as long to do the actual work if you have some tools that are sharpened and prepared. If you're prepared mentally, spiritually, with your curriculum, with your lesson plan, with your content, then you've set yourself up to do the work a lot easier than if you were not prepared to approach that tree, all right, or approach that classroom. So resist the temptation that Sunday school is only what happens in the classroom. Sunday school is so much more than Sunday morning in that classroom or in that bus. A piece of Sunday school should be a part of every other day in your week. So we don't need to be forgetting to pray, to fast, to connect with your kids, communicate with your team. I love what Sister Ladd was talking about, communication in kids' church. Communicate, communicate, communicate. And when you thought that you communicated, communicate again. What are you doing? You're preparing for chopping down the tree. You're sharpening your axe. You're making sure that the job's going to get done. It's going to get done efficiently. So sometimes we get frustrated in classroom management because we feel like we can't control everything. Well, focus on what you can control. One thing you're guaranteed to be able to control is you. You may not be able to control your kids. You may not be able to control every aspect of that classroom, the time spent in that classroom, but one thing for certain, you can control you. You should be able to own your attitude, right? If we aren't managing ourselves, how can we expect to manage a classroom full of children who definitely can't manage themselves, right? That's the whole session is proof of this. Teach me how to manage my classroom. Tell me, how do I discipline these children? That would be crazy. Well, there's no magic trick to making your kids behave, right? But we must be committed to the process. We must be willing to sharpen ourselves, sharpen that axe, get the tools right before approaching the kids on Sunday morning. So if you're just, Sunday morning comes, you get to Sunday school, and this is the first time you're thinking about Sunday morning, is when you're walking in the classroom, you're going to have a hard time because your axe isn't sharp, right? You got to get your axe sharp. So other than self-management, another thing that you work on to be able to manage your class well is not just self-management, but team management. Everybody say team management. Team management. So we control what we can control. That is us, our responsibilities, the variables that we are contributing to the classroom. And then there's team management or team maintenance. This is all the parts need to work properly in order for a vehicle to run efficiently. I always get paranoid when my check engine light's on because I know there's something wrong. The vehicle's recognized, even if I don't hear it, if I don't feel it, if I don't see it, there's something in the system that's not right and it needs attention. And so we need to make sure that every part or every piece of our team is going to be functioning the way that it should, so that when we show up on Sunday, the vehicle, which is our department, our children's ministry, the church, is going to be able to take these kids where we want them to go. We want them to go ahead. We want them to get to the altar. We want them to have the move of God. We want them to experience the Holy Ghost. And so if we are the vehicle or the vessel for the gospel to these children, I want to make sure that every part of that vehicle is in good working order. How do I do that? By managing my team, by maintaining a team, right? You can't just ignore your car and expect it to run well, right? You have to do oil changes, put gas in. It takes maintenance. And the same thing with a team. Like you say we have a Sunday school department. Great, we have a Sunday school department. It's going to take more than just showing up on Sunday and trying to work together on Sundays only to have efficient Sunday school. If you want to have a good Sunday school team, that team is going to require maintenance, meetings, phone calls, conversations outside of Sunday morning, post-Sunday morning breakdowns. How did it go? What could have went better? So I have what I call the ABCs of team maintenance. Okay. So A, acknowledge you're working with human beings who are different than you. We're going to save ourselves a world of trouble if we have this understanding. Acknowledge the fact that I am one in a team, and not everybody is going to think the same way that I do. They're not all going to share the same opinions, the same methodology, but our motive is the same. We want to see these kids saved, right? We want to have great Sunday school. So acknowledge that you're working with human beings. Don't hold them up on a pedestal above reproach. They can never disagree with you. They can never call you out. They can never disappoint you. You're setting yourself up for a lot of frustration. They're human beings, just like you are. There's an elder in English that would say it this way: people are pitiful, and we're all people, right? So A, acknowledge you're working with humans. Another ABC of team maintenance is appreciate your differences and use them for the benefit of the children's ministry, okay? So appreciate your differences. If there's people that are different than you, learn ways to capitalize on that. Maybe somebody's more organized than you. Don't be intimidated by that. Use them. Let them make up where maybe you're lacking. Maybe somebody's more creative. Don't feel intimidated. Don't feel like it's a contest as to who can come up with the best idea. It's not about us. It's not about our ego. It's about the kids. So acknowledge you're working in a team who are different from you, and appreciate all the different things that your team contributes to the ministry. Another part of A is accept. Accept you may not get it your way every time. Just accept it. Right out the gate. I accept it. I acknowledge I'm working with people who are different from me. I appreciate those differences. We're going to capitalize on that, and I'm going to accept that we're not going to do it my way every time. I accept we're going to sing songs that I don't like. I accept, I'm not going to be the lead on the skit or whatever. There's no room for petty feelings in children's ministry. We got to rise above that. The Bible says He wants childlike faith, not childish faith. He wants people to be childlike, not childish. All right? You got to rise above that. That's the A's of it, the A's and T's of team maintenance. Let's look at the B's. Be involved. Be encouraging. Let me give you an example of being involved. A lot of times the temptation is, if you're working with a team in Sunday school, that if it's not your turn yet, you're just in the back on your phone waiting until your turn is up. Don't be that guy. Be involved. Be in with the kids. You're gonna start to see a huge decrease of kids that are misbehaving when there's adults there involving themselves in what's going on. Be involved in the Psalms. Be involved in, even if you know that they're not going to call on you, when a teacher's asking like, hey, I need a volunteer, you know they're not going to call on you because they want the kids, right? They're trying to involve the kids. You act like you want to be used, right? Because you are showing that you want to be involved. And if you're showing that you want to be involved, you're giving the kids permission to be involved as well. If you're laughing, if you're singing, if you're dancing and jumping and acting a fool, you're giving the kids permission to enjoy themselves by your example, by your involvement. So be involved. Be encouraging. Don't be a wet blanket. Don't be a naysayer. Always speak encouraging. Always speak faith. That's team maintenance. Be dependable. If you've been delegated a task, do it. Don't be the person where your lead teacher, your pastor feels like he's taking a risk by giving you something. I don't know if it'll get done, but I'm going to try. I'm going to give them a chance. Show them that you're dependable. Be dependable. If you want to have a good team, you need people that's going to be dependable, be faithful. It's going to be showing up. Nobody can help emergencies or things outside of control. Remember, you control what you can control, all right? And in my instance, just be dependable. And then also be collaborative, right? That means if you have an idea, share it. Speak up. I find that sometimes people They won't speak up because they either are intimidated, they're insecure that their ideas aren't good or whatever, or they just don't have the chance because somebody else in the team has a bigger mouth. That's my problem. I have to learn to shut my mouth, right? Words just come out easily with me, and I've got to learn to collaborate. Sometimes that's not saying I have to learn to contribute, but sometimes that means learning to give someone else an opportunity to be involved, right? So be collaborative. Don't always be the one that has to have control of everything. We're in this together as a team. The C's of team maintenance is this: communicate vision. So what do you see? Where do you want your children's ministry to go? Where do you want your bus ministry to go? Communicate to that, to your team. Communicate goals for your classroom, right? Communicate expectations. Maybe that's as a department, or maybe that's for individuals. I'm going to communicate what I expect. If you don't communicate expectations, failure to, we've all said it before, heard it said before, failure to plan is planning to fail, right? Those expectations, that is your plan. You're setting forth goals and expectations for you to hit. Don't have unspoken expectations. Don't expect things from people or from your Sunday school, and then when it doesn't happen, get frustrated and angry at them because they didn't measure up to your standard if you didn't communicate to them first. If you're going to have a good team, you have to learn to communicate expectations, communicate challenges, right? Notice I didn't say communicate problems, right? Because I don't want to be the one always bringing up problems all the time. But let's approach it as a challenge that as a team, we're going to work through this together. We're going to find a solution together. It's not, I have an issue with you. It's like, hey, let's challenge each other. I think that we can improve in this area. What can we do to make up the lack that I'm seeing here? How do you feel about this? Do you feel like we're lacking in this area? And challenge one another to always lift up your head and achieve greater things. Communicate victories. So don't just talk about your challenges. Don't just be casting vision, but take time with your team to talk about and testify where God has brought you and what God is doing in that class, and share stories about conversations you've had with kids, or moments in the altar you had with kids, or something that you saw when you took that child home on the bus, whatever it is. Share testimonies with each other, because that's all a part of team maintenance. The closer you are as a team, the more effective you're going to be in your children's ministry. All right, this is all part of classroom management. All right. If you're going to have a successful classroom management, you got to get in the groove, and you got to stay groovy. I know that's old lingo, right? Nobody says groovy dude, right? But I'm saying it because it's a children's ministry conference, and I can say it. So getting in a groove literally means that you're running center with a channel, right? It's a channel with two boundaries. Two boundaries that come together and they create a groove, right? So if we're going to get in a groove in Sunday school, that means we have two boundaries. Those boundaries are going to be your routines. Those boundaries are going to be your routines. What are you going to hold yourself to as a routine? What is your boundary? What is your expectation for your week? So your routine for preparation on one end, and then your routine for Sunday morning execution. Right? Preparation, execution. And if you can stay in those routines, then you're in a groove, and you can stay groovy. You get it? Because you're in a groove, you can be groovy. You get it? Okay, cool. And so we've got to be honest with ourselves in identifying bad habits in our weekly routine. We need to hold ourselves to a standard in our preparation. Maybe it's specific as on Tuesday evenings we're having our class meeting or our phone call, or maybe right after Sunday morning service we have a post-Sunday powwow, where we come together, we talk about what went well, and look over the lesson plan for the following Sunday. Whatever it is, find a routine and hold yourself to that. Things come up, I understand. Schedules might have to shift from time to time, but you want to find a boundary for yourself that you can hold yourself accountable to as a team. Because if you just like, whenever it works for everybody and we'll just figure it out, it never will until Saturday. You have to have some routine in place for preparation, all right? So that's one boundary, and then execution, right? I'm all for trying new things, and especially when you're a smaller church with an upcoming program, you can try new things. You can shift things around and try new rooms and try new schedules and what have you. But eventually you're going to want to try to find a routine, a system, and you want to give it time to work. You want to stay in that boundary. Because as long as you stay in that boundary, you're going to see results. You just got to stay groovy, right? Procrastination is real, all right? I am the world's biggest procrastinator. Brother Booker knows if he needs handouts, he tells me that he needs them by the Sunday before, so I can get them to him the Thursday of. Okay? Like my mom's the same way. If you want her to be on time, you tell her that the event starts an hour before it actually does, right? Procrastination is real. I get it. Don't let that be an excuse not to try. A lot of people identify themselves as chronic procrastinators, and they just accept it, and they don't even try. They don't even attempt to change. They're just like, well, that's just who I am. They got to deal with it. No, that's selfish. Don't be that way. If you agree to a routine procedure with your team and you stick to it for a month, you will see positive results and develop habits that will come as naturally to you as your procrastination does. You gotta hold yourself to those routines, hold yourself to those boundaries until they become habitual and expectation on a team level. Does that make sense? And if you stick to it and give it time, then you will see results. When we aren't in the groove or within our routine for preparation and our routine for execution, then we will not be groovy on Sunday morning. Everything will fall apart. We'll be out of rhythm. The kids will know we haven't prepared. The kids will know we're scratching our head trying to wonder what we're going to do next. And they will take advantage of it. It will not be groovy. So get in the groove. Stay in the groove. Find procedures and routines and stick to it. Commit to it. All right, another thing for classroom management is facility organization. Organization. Okay. Don't be a slob. What is a slob? A slob is a person who is lazy and has low standards of cleanliness. Remember, this isn't your house. It's God's house. Even if it's your classroom, that's God's classroom. Even if it's a closet, that's God's closet. Okay? This is not just a bus, this is God's bus, right? And God has entrusted it to us to transport the gospel to these kids. So our classroom space obviously ought to be well kept, right? We should be cleaning our classrooms, our buses, making sure that they're homey, they feel inviting, they're warm and welcoming, and they're clean. But and that's kind of a given. But if we're also unorganized with our supplies and our resources, that can sometimes translate to inefficiency in our ministry as well. All right, so let me give you an example. How many times have we had to go and buy a new staple gun because we could not find the 10 other staple guns we knew we had somewhere? I'm preaching to the choir. And we look for them, but because our cabinets and our drawers are stuffed full, we don't know where anything specific is kept. So everything ought to have a home. My wife is a chronic labeler. She loves to label things. Label things. And then if you use it, put it back. Don't let it be homeless. Let it where the label is. It's not that hard. This will save you and your team's sanity and time. Okay? It also prevents unnecessary drama between the staff. Right? Those are things that we can control. Right? If you need to use something that's in another classroom, communicate with them first before you just go into their domain and take it, right? Communicate. You're going to overcome a lot of problems if you just start talking with one another. Don't try to, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission, sometimes we're taught, right? Don't treat your fellow children's ministers that way. Communicate with one another. Yeah, we shouldn't operate with the mentality of shoot now and ask questions later. Hebrews chapter 10, verse number 24, the Bible would tell us to be considerate or provoke, be preventive, be considerate, to provoke one another unto love and to good works. Sometimes we're really good at provoking. But the Bible says if you're going to provoke into love and good works, right? Colossians 3:23 says, whatsoever you do it heartily as unto the Lord and not unto men. So I want to make sure that my facility is organized. I've got some practical tips for you on that. We had a it was like a cabinet, all right, like kind of a wardrobe cabinet, and it was stuffed full of our puppets. The only way to get to a puppet is by opening up that door of the wardrobe, making sure they didn't all fall out at one time, and digging around until you found the one that you wanted. So my solution to that was I found an empty space along the wall in our closet, and I took some PVC and I cut it down in 45-degree angles, and I screwed the PVC into the studs of our closet to where they're sticking out like this, and I put the puppets on the PVC to where it took up an entire wall in the closet, right? And they were all hanging on PVC. You're going to maintain your puppets a lot better than just stuffing them in a bucket, stuffing them in a cabinet. They're hanging properly, they're being stored properly, and when you go in there, it's so much easier to find what you're looking for, right? And so that's been really helpful for our church. But facility organization, it's so crazy. It's so amazing, and if you have one, please do not feel like I'm calling you out, because I'm telling you it's true. Every church has a triangle room. Some people are laughing because they know what I'm talking about when I say the triangle room. It's the triangle room that is a closet or something in the church that it's like extra space because the church is like, fan-shaped or something. And so it's just this random room where they use as storage, and it becomes a catch-all for everything. Maybe it's not the shape of a triangle, but it's storage, and it's not organized storage. It's just stuff everywhere, right? Every church has that. And it's crazy. My wife and I, we would go into our triangle rooms, and we would label, and we would organize, and we would clean out, and we'd throw stuff away, we'd donate stuff. We'd get totes and buckets, and it looked so good. And a month later, it's just an absolute mess again. And we're like, where are the gremlins living? Like, I've got to kill these things. So they stop wreaking havoc in our children's ministry. And so it's just a matter of maintaining that team that says, you know what, if we're going to manage the classroom well, it's going to start with some behind-the-scenes stuff. And maybe it doesn't have to deal with discipline as much as it does deal with ourselves and our team and how we approach the kingdom of God in general. All right? So also, if you want to manage your classroom well, realize the power of presentation. Your preparedness is 80% of your management. That's why I'm spending so much time on this. Your preparedness is 80% of classroom management. Brother Hodge, where did you get that statistic? I made it up. Just letting you know. But you should have everything lined up before and ready to go before your kids come in the classroom. Your props should be staged and presented nicely. Any persona that you take on, whether it be a character in a skit or whatever, it ought to have been well thought out. The costumes have been prepared and put in a place where you can get to it easily. There's not a lot of downtime. If you have a lot of downtime in Sunday school or children's church, the kids are going to find ways to fill that downtime or that empty noise, that empty space. So always have something to demand their attention, okay? The actual performance of your skits, object lessons, stories, etc., it matters. So don't wing it. Practice. If you're doing a skit with your team, unless you guys are just like rock star, impromptu like actors, and you've done this for decades, most of the time, you need to go through it at least one time before you try to commit to something. Why? Because preparedness is 80% of posture management. If you're not prepared, the kids are going to know. They're going to know. And not just that, but also this. And I might actually go over this a little bit later. But the truth of the matter is this. We don't teach curriculum. We teach kids. So when we're not prepared, our focus is more on the content. Our focus isn't on the kids. But if we're prepared with our content, we're prepared with our curriculum, we're prepared with our lesson plan, our focus by Sunday isn't what we're teaching. What we're teaching is just for the kids, but our focus is on the kids, not in our book, not on our lesson plan, not on the pops, not on all that stuff. We can do it without even looking. We're not looking at the book. Our attention is on the kids. And if your eyes are on the kids, you're going to solve a lot of problems with discipline if they know you're watching it, versus if you're focused on something else. So be prepared. I cannot overemphasize that enough. So also another thing that you can do for classroom management, look ahead in your lesson planning. Who here uses curriculum? Pre-made curriculum. All right. One more time, just for the sake of me knowing, if you use curriculum from like Group or Pentecostal Publishing House or any of those types of vendor suppliers, raise your hand nice and high so I can see. Okay. So some of you guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is incredible. Oh, 7, 8. Okay. 8 people or teachers. Some of you are couples that might be teaching the same class, so probably went down to the amount of classrooms that are using curriculum today. It's a very small minority of people who's actually using curriculum. Most people are just doing their own lesson plan. That's great. I don't have any problem with that, except for the times when we're just planning our lessons for the coming Sunday. We're selling ourselves short just planning Sunday to Sunday. If you want to have good classroom management, you want to do effective themes, you want to do effective series with your kids, you want to be looking ahead and planning ahead. So even if you don't use curriculum, bundle your lessons up. Don't just focus on, I'm teaching this lesson and then this lesson, and I'll just figure it out as we go. Try to bundle it up into themes, you know. I've seen people, there's some churches, they plan out 52 weeks of Sunday school, a whole year in advance. Like that's crazy. That's amazing. Most curriculums are set up to be 6 months or 3 months at a time, right? And they're broken down into units, 1 month units. That's fine. Just don't do it Sunday to Sunday. You're going to sell yourself short. Look ahead. Plan ahead. Read over your curriculum the moment it comes in. Don't just do it week to week. Read over your curriculum. See where you're going. Get inspiration for the whole part of the use of the quarter or whatever. I already went through some of this and see. The reason I encourage looking ahead with lesson planning because it prevents repeated topics. Sometimes we can get on our candy sticks and we can just kind of teach the same things over and over in different ways. And so when you're writing it down, you're helping yourself make sure that you're teaching holistically. Like I don't want to just teach principles. If you use PPH, more power to you, but one of the reasons why we stopped doing PPH is because there would be whole quarters where there was hardly any stories. It was all just principles. And granted, curriculum, you're not supposed to read from the book anyway. You're supposed to add to it and adapt it, right? But some of our teachers, they were having a really hard time because it wasn't what we do in Sunday school. And so we started doing our own lesson planning. Well, the temptation was to do it Sunday to Sunday. Don't operate Sunday to Sunday. But when you think long term, you give yourself freedom to think outside the box too, with methods, like how you're going to teach something, or if you're going to bring in a special guest, you're going to do a big object lesson. How many times did somebody see an object lesson on ApostolicChildren'sMinistry.com or on YouTube or somewhere, or God gave you inspiration for an object lesson, and you're like, man, I want to do that so bad, but it's Saturday evening, and I don't have time to prepare for it. I can't go to the store. I have to order it online, and it's not going to get here in time, right? Let's be honest, how many of us sold ourselves short that because we weren't moving ahead far enough? Like, I have done that plenty of times. And so, it's so much more helpful to look ahead. You don't want to have it planned out A to Z that far ahead, but familiar yourself with what's coming. Yeah, many times we get inspired with a good idea for a certain lesson, but it's way too late to do anything about it because we're not planning it. Yes, okay. All right, now we get to the reason why I know everybody came here. Discipline. Quit your running, kid, or I'll break your leg. Right? Classroom management, a lot of the time we're thinking, okay, classroom discipline. And notice I spent the first half of this whole session not even talking about classroom management or discipline when it relates to the kids. Because preparedness is 80% of your classroom management. Managing yourself, maintaining your team, facility organization, planning ahead for your lessons, okay? All of those things are going to help. Making sure you're practiced up and you're prepared. But let's talk about classroom discipline, which I really like to identify as discipleship. It's really the root of discipline is discipleship. There's a difference between punishment and discipline. Punishment is just the consequence of bad behavior. Discipline is the lesson behind why we don't do the bad behavior, right? Discipline is teaching in nature. Punishment is just consequence, okay? So when we discipline kids, we wanted to use it as a teaching tool to better our class, to better them as individuals, not just to demean them or to punish them because they did something bad, right? Identify and clarify the desired behavior of your students. I love what the Rock Church was saying in Kids Church. They don't have rules, they have agreements. I love that. We're going to agree this is how we behave in the Kids Church. We're going to agree that we're not going to talk over each other. We're going to agree, and that's a good way to do it. But you need to have expectations clarified to the kids in your classroom or on the bus. We have our rules for the bus posted on the bus. No cursing, no hitting. We have it posted on the bus, and the bus monitor, the bus captain, they can go over the rules with new kids from time to time. But you want to clarify. Because if you don't clarify your expectations for your kids, then we don't really have any reason to get mad at them when they disobey. They're not disobeying if you didn't tell them. You know what I mean? They're just behaving. They're not misbehaving, they're just behaving. They're kids. They need clarity. They need expectations. They need those standards. So tell them ahead of time. Have clear-cut rules and expectations. We have 4 rules in our kids' church, and you could come up with your own. But ours is number 1 is to point up to the ceiling, bring your finger to your mouth, and look at your neighbor and tell them shh. When you tell them no talking when the person up front is talking, right? No talking when the person up front is talking. And we'll try to do motions too, like no talking when the person up front is talking. That way, if we need to address a kid, instead of saying, hey Johnny, shh, be quiet. Hey. Sometimes our little noises and our snapping and our shushing, sometimes it's more distracting than what they're actually doing, right? So have an emotion. If you just get their attention, get them looking you in the eye, and you just do this, they know what that means. You're pointing back to that expectation. I expect you to be quiet. And number 2 is we take, poke your eyes out, no, just like, you go, I'm watching you. And we tell them, look at your neighbor and tell them, I'm watching you. And so they do that, and they said, if somebody does this to you, if a teacher does this to you, then that means one of 2 things. Either you need to get back in your seat, or you need to leave your neighbor alone. All right? And sometimes they'll be all over each other, they'll be playing, messing around with each other, and just get their attention. Say, hey, listen up. Right? The 3rd one is the best one, and it encourages fun. It doesn't really even feel like a rule. It's 3 words. Just have fun. We make it a rule in kids' church. They have to have fun, right? And I tell them, how do you have fun in kids' church? You participate. If you don't participate, then you can't have fun. So participate, sing the songs, dance. Go nuts when the teacher's trying to get a helper. Let them know how much you want to be used, right? And then the 4th one is I have them take 4 fingers, and I have them sweep off their hand and say, we take care of God's property. And so if we see trash, we clean up after ourselves. Yeah, so we take care of God's property. So those are the 4 rules in our kids' church, and we have motions for them. So whenever we're telling a kid, hey, I've already clarified what I expect from you, now do it, right? And you don't have to be on them about it. You don't have to go out of your way and be super loud. You're just kind of getting their attention and pointing them back to what you already clarified. It shouldn't be a long laundry list of rules, all right? I've learned as pastoring, not every situation and not every child is the same. So it may not be as black and white as it sounds, but try to determine the progression of discipline before the rule is broken. Okay? So what that means is if your kid's out of the seat, he's on the floor, and you're not going to just go up to them and pick them up and carry them out and say, that's it, I'm done with you, John. You're going back to mom, right? There's going to be a progression. There's some people that the moment the rule is broken, they're like Mach 5. They're like the height of punishment, right? They're pulling up a belt, man. I mean, they're like, there's no progression. It's just like, you trigger somebody and they're pulling out the big boy voice, right? There should be a progression of discipline, all right? You should be patient with them. They're kids. Let them learn your expectations. Let them learn that you're actually paying attention. A lot of times kids do things because they don't think that you actually are paying attention, right? But if they know that you're paying attention, you don't have to go Mach 5 on them, Mach 10 or whatever. I'm not an airplane guy, so you don't have to go nuts on it the first time they disobey. Just have the progression in mind before they break the rules. Because they're going to break the rules. But you don't have to send them to the sanctuary with a dunce cap on the first time they break the rule, right? Or the last time they break the rule, by the way. That's not a good way to handle things. But you want to be consistent. Kids are gambling addicts. They love slot machines. They do. They'll put their 2 cents in, and they'll try you. They'll pull the lever. They'll just keep trying. They'll just try you and try you and try you. And they know most of the time they're not going to win. But sometimes you give in, and you just let them do what they want. They'll try you. Be consistent. Don't let kids get away with it, right? And sometimes they might because you're not paying attention, right? And sometimes they're sneaky. Kids are sneaky. But be consistent, all right? Never be demeaning to a child. Consider their heart, right? Right? We want to break their pride. We want to break the patterns of misbehavior, but we don't want to break their heart. We don't want to break their spirit, right? We should be able to correct them without embarrassing them, without hurting them to the point where they don't want to come back. If we discipline them in a way that makes them not want to ever come back, then we didn't teach them anything. We just punished them to the point where they never want to be a part of the only place that can really save them, right? And so, I don't call kids out. I don't call kids out. That's why it's really important. I always think, and I understand small church, it's hard to implement this, but I think that there should always be at least 2 teachers to a classroom. Why? Because if there's an issue that you need to address, but you're the one that's got the attention of the whole classroom, and you got to address it, then now all of a sudden you up in the front, you're having to address that one kid, and now whereas one adult could have just walked over there very, very easily and got down on their knees and just corrected it just like that, very quietly, very discreetly. You're pointing them out, and now all the eyes on those kids are on them, and they're feeling embarrassed and ashamed and demeaned, and it could cause a lot of shame. And so we don't want to hurt these kids to the point where they don't come back, all right? I'm not telling you to walk on eggshells, but at the same time, we want them to come back. God forbid we have problem children in our church and they stop coming to Sunday school and we feel a sense of relief. It says, oh man, I thought that would never end. My God, aren't they a soul? They had a chance of salvation. They were coming. And so we want to look for ways to direct them, to discipline them without hurting them or pushing them away. After it's all said and done, they should still want to be there next Sunday. They should still be willing to give you a hug before they get on that bus. I'd tell you, I love you too, right? Well-behaved kids should not sit still and be quiet in church. In my opinion, a well-behaved child is not a child who's sitting still and being quiet. That's not how we have church. Right? The correct behavior for church would be on your feet, jumping, dancing, clapping, running the aisles. They're on their feet, they're moving, right? They're shouting amen, they're singing hallelujah. And yet so many times if we're hard-nosed about certain things, we can just tell the kids, hey, sit there, be quiet. And then all of a sudden they're teenagers and we want them to be just like this force for revival for our church. Just like, when did you give them that opportunity? Like when all of a sudden they turn 13 and now they have permission to be involved. Let's not what's the word I'm looking for? Stifle. Thank you, Brother Drew. Let's not stifle our children to be involved in the name of good behavior. We want them to be active. We want them to be engaging. We just have to create that environment and give them that permission. And then give them that groove, right? Give them those expectations, those routines. When we're singing, this is the expectation. When it's lesson time, this is the expectation. When it's object lesson time and I'm calling for helpers, this is the expectation. Like you saw me last night when I was doing, when I was asking kids to help, I was pushing them. I wanted them to really get involved. And then when I felt like it was getting a little out of hand, I just go sit. And I make it seem like it was part of my deal. It didn't seem like discipline, but in a sense, I was trying to regain control. And I was losing control, right? And so you don't make it sound like it's a bad thing. You just kind of treat it like it's a fun thing that they're a part of. Sit. And then all running back to their seats, right? And so a well-behaved kid shouldn't sit still and be quiet. We must teach them how to properly engage in church and enjoy their time in the house of God, not just follow the rules. We want them to enjoy being here. Because unless their parents are dragging them, there's not one bus kid I can think of in my church, there's not one kid that gets on that bus that gets on there because their mom or dad or their grandma's making them. Every time they get on that bus, they want to get on that bus. And the moment they stop wanting to get on that bus, they're gone. They're not coming. So we want to make sure that they want to be providing that environment. All right, so there's two ways to approach discipline in the classroom. Number one, I like using medical terminology, we could use it as preventive care. The second approach is critical care. Preventive care is the things that we can do to keep things from needing discipline, right? And then critical care can be the things that we can do to actively discipline when there's problems, okay? So preventive care, we've already went over a big old laundry list. Self-management, team maintenance, lesson planning, facility organization, those things. But the number one reasons kids act out in children's church or Sunday school is that they're bored. Sorry, not sorry. It's true. Number one reasons kids act out is because they're bored. They're not being engaged. All right. Dynamic and engaging content. We talked about that this morning. It's going to be exciting and engaging. It will attract the energy and the creativity of a child. Don't be upset with a child for acting like a child. Right? If they don't have anything to do with their energy or their creativity, then they're not going to be your friend. But if you channel that, then they're going to have a great time and you're going to have a good time too. Here's another thing for preventive care. Try smiling. Can I see it? Right? Try smiling. Even when you're guiding a child to correct behavior, you don't have to be like the stoic, like, you don't have to blow a top every time you're getting onto a kid or correcting them. You don't have to go Mach 5, right? You can just make it exciting. Like, be quiet and you can have fun. Right? You don't have to go automatically stone cold or super stern with them. You can still have joy when you're guiding them in the right direction. If there are helpers in the class, I am a huge proponent of this. Helpers should never be sitting all the way in the back unless that's their role. Okay? Unless they're a doorkeeper or the bathroom monitor or whatever, the photographer, and they're kind of all over the place, right? That's understandable. But if you're a helper in kids' church and it's just not your turn to do your thing, do not be standing in the back on your phone waiting for your turn. Sit with the kids. This is going to take out a ton of issues with your kids misbehaving. Just knowing there's an adult or a helper that's responsible for maintaining order in the classroom is sitting next to them, that is going to handle a lot of issues. Not just that, but also I've seen it to where when a helper is even on the far sides or in the back, and they'll come up, which walking up to somebody having an issue, that's already kind of a distraction in and of itself. But like say you come up and you're not anywhere near the kid and you're trying to correct something happening over here. Sorry, I blew a lid. Stop it. So you're going over there, if you're not with the kids, you're going to have to get their attention. So that means you're going to be walking up there, you're going to be making some sort of motion or noise. You just got the attention of a whole bunch more kids than what were just the issue, right? But if you're sitting with them, what I tell our teachers is sit in the middle of the road. This is just the way that our church can work, right? Because we're up a little bit on a platform. I understand if the helpers are larger, you know, sitting in the middle of the row, every other row, sometimes I can't see because whatever's sitting in front of me, right? But do it, just think of how to do it. This is how we do it in our church. Starting from the second row, we place a helper in the middle of that second row and then put them in the same exact spot every other row. That way, imagine this. Your helper's sitting here in the middle. I'm in arm's length of any issue. I can touch any kid on that row and the row in front of me without causing a distraction, without making a noise, without having to walk up to them. I'm there, I'm present with them, and I can handle the issues before they get too out of control, and it's done. Right? So sit with the kids. Another thing for preventive care is reward good behavior. Right? Don't just identify when they're misbehaving or doing things incorrectly or wrong. Reward their good behavior. Praise them for what they're doing correctly or what they're doing right. Right? Who's telling me when I need to stop? No one? Oh boy, that's not good. Oh, I'm supposed to be done. You guys can read the rest, I guess. I guess I can keep going until somebody tells me to stop. Reward their good behavior, small and big, small prizes, things that don't cost a lot of money, that may not mean so much to us. You give them a little piece of candy, that goes a long way. Incentivize good behavior. This is what I would say about incentives. Never take away a reward they earned when they were doing well for punishment for something they did wrong after the fact. Never take away rewards. You're establishing that it doesn't matter if they behave because don't they stop and fall out the window. So never use that as punishment. Be a student of your students. What are they dealing with at home, and have you shown support to them personally? All right. My Lord, I had a lot more, but I'm long-winded, so sorry, y'all. You could read the rest. Critical care is important. That's probably the reason why most of y'all came into this class and I didn't even get to it. But I can't stress this enough. If you want to have good management in your classroom, it starts with making sure you're prepared, you're managing your spirit, your attitude about children's ministry, you're having good team maintenance or facilities organized, you're planning properly, and you're preventing things from happening before they happen by being clear about your rules and expectations and being present with the kids. So God bless you guys. Thank you.